Okay, we're good. So I cut you off. Did you finish your thought there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this loop, we need to put in place a loose sense of framework of collaboration and communication between our different districts, innovation neighborhoods, because this will be huge for St. Louis because we're so used to being separated. And we live in the separation and it disconnects us from each other. So once we just simply agree that we're gonna do this, things are gonna change much, much faster. And when we do this, it'll be the beginning of us getting national recognition, international recognition as an organic regional innovation community that's figuring this out on its own.
That's already kind of starting, according to the Brookings Institution.
Yes.
They're big fans of Cortex.
Well, and kind of to carry on with your theme a little bit here, my background is actually in economic development. And what is the cool, awesome thing about this is these startups, these high-tech startups, retaining them, be it a graduate from a local institution that we keep here that doesn't go away, or bringing in new startups and new companies. It's a win for everybody. So much in economic development is about a win for me, a loss for you. This is a win for everybody. It raises everybody up to have this going on. So that's the exciting thing for me to see.
I think we should really view, I will preach of this for a while. I think we need to view this high-speed connectivity and the 1 gigabyte fiber as water, gas, electric. I mean, it is a basic utility that we cannot attract as an economic developer or as an innovator or having innovative communities or having basic needs in a community like Old North or North County. People need connectivity because that is a basic utility now. And we can't attract people or keep people unless we start thinking of these things, just like transportation, as a basic utility.
And the IKEA store goes against the Cortex master plan for sustainability, if you really think about it. It kills a lot of pedestrian flow, I'd imagine.
So we have a great innovation taking place here on an urban level in St. Louis right now. You mentioned the Brookings study, which said that the future of America's innovation districts, but we're evolving in innovation districts in the first innovation neighborhoods with what's happening with the trolley and data rail, and then later with Grand Center and Washington Avenue. We're in a moment where we can pull ahead of the rest of the pack just by deciding to collaborate and start sharing information in this loose framework, but really support this bottom grassroots effort. And things like that could spill over. You could spill over into North St. Louis because that's what North St. Louis needs badly.
It will spill over.
But it just takes people, more jobs and people. And that's what St. Louis is not getting. We're a slow growth metropolitan area.
Or flat.
Or flat. And I mean, it's great to see these things happening, but again, it's kind of the point I was trying to make earlier that maybe it's not helpful to compare us to the super high growth cities, but to compare ourselves to ourselves. And we're doing okay, but maybe we shouldn't be satisfied with that.
Where do this is on Twitter, people are talking about the abandoned buildings in not just North St. Louis, but predominantly North St. Louis. Where does that come into a conversation about development?
Oh, vacant buildings, the research is clear. Every vacant building cascades negative impacts on all the properties around it. So if you get a certain number of vacant properties in a neighborhood, you're going to have contagious abandonment. We've got areas that are really burdened by this. And so it's a major issue, and how we're going to spread the wealth to the other parts of the city, especially North St. Louis, I think is going to be a big issue in the next decade.
So using our model that we're developing in the loop with the trolley and data rail, if we extended that concept to the Crown Center neighborhood and called that Crown Data Rail and include that development right around there, people are going to move over there instantly.
I'm 160 paces from Crown, so I would appreciate that if we could have that there.
And that could ignite this organic quality of North Side because we're now joining where we've been massively separated.
And that's a compelling story to tell.
Compelling for St.
And
Louis.
a compelling story is what will get us the national and the international press.
And St. Louis is a region that's like a rubber band. It has exceptional talent. It's been held back like this for decades and is just waiting to go boing. And we're right at the tip of this right now.
I agree with you. We're right there. We're ready to move forward, and we need to.
Can a city like the size, would you agree that it's a utility, the internet?
It's on a long, slow march to becoming a utility. It will be painful in the United States. There's a lot of conflicting interests, but the model that we're developing in the Loop is service provider independent. We can work with anyone. It's our organizational model and a collaborative economic model which really drives the impact. So it actually helps service providers expand faster.
And this is so important, I mean, even to educating, the next generation. The schools now are giving iPads and computer devices to, their students. To have that ability to connect is just crucial.
The floor is open. I've got a bunch of notes here that I need to, I want to see what I missed. I'm leaving out you guys, and I'm leaving out Joe in the post-show. I'm sorry. What's on your mind?
Well, no, I can say I look at a lot of American cities, and you're talking about is St. Louis. Who do we measure against? And for sure, we're right up in against all of these others. We're doing the same things that a lot of cities are doing. Mm-hmm. We're returning to our riverfront. We're leveraging institutional anchors to spur development around the city. We're looking at the stock of buildings that we have. These are all paradigms of development across the country. So that's the good news for St. Louis. We have our own particularities, of course, and issues. And so we need to make sure that, development, the high-tech sector is great. The jobs that it will produce are great. But there are also low-tech jobs that are needed to be had. Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of outside of the equation. But we're, Green Bay, Wisconsin redeveloped their riverfront. Chattanooga, Louisville, I'm not talking about just the New Yorks and San Franciscos. So there's a lot of momentum.
It's interesting to think about some of the projects we talked about today that are on the horizon, because what really, from my perspective on this most smaller scale development, really is the trickle down in the fact that if the more people we can get here, right, the more people that are going to be using the restaurants and using the retailers, right? And as people start making those two entities successful and more of those things need to start coming into play, the more people are going to want to live and work in those neighborhoods. And so again, some of the stuff that's on the forefront that's actually happening is going to, again, kind of help our central corridor grow, help with that fringe development, but help with that chicken and the egg of getting the people here so those things that are always the hardest, the restaurants and the retail, are successful because some of these things that we've talked about today parlay themselves into making it easier for us to fill the residential and the commercial spaces, because people, again, want to be in those areas that have strong retail and restaurant components. And so that's really, to me, from a small scale development, what's most exciting about some of the things that we talked about today is I actually do think those are going to make a big difference in St. Louis in the next few years.
And that's where government or public investment comes in, and if nothing else, transportation, to get from all these places you're talking about conveniently, cheaply, and maybe if we're a real city, doing it without a car, doing it on a streetcar. And because there's an axiom that when people move, they spend money. Mm-hmm. And if we get people moving in St. Louis, they'll spend money. And
when they physically move.
Yeah. They spend money.
I think the Cortex District is really, in my opinion, leading the way with regard to modeling density and the importance of density, and putting everybody, because the old Jane Jacobs rule of eyes on the street and the perception of safety. When you have all those, not just services, but people working nearby and living nearby, and you have more bodies just bouncing around and colliding and having opportunities, there are perceptions of St. Louis not being safe. I learned about that when I was in California and moving out here. But in reality, it is a fairly safe community. And the more that we can, use what's happening in Cortex, and if it does work, and I believe it will, then you could use that same type of model and that same sort of type of density in other neighborhoods as well. It's not a cookie cutter approach, and it's never going to be a silver bullet. But I think density and a return to a tighter network, both information highway network and even people network, is really going to help propel us.
Lisa, I'm just curious if Highland likes their high-speed internet. They voted for it. They are paying for it. Mm-hmm. Do they care about what we're talking about tonight? Do they care about IKEA and Cortex?
I think it's not completely on everyone's radar screen, and I think that can be said about any area that we're talking about, and I think that we all need, and everyone needs to be on an education campaign to talk about just how important this is, and that's our job, and that's why we're all sitting here tonight.
So I think,
Thank you for the opportunity.
I think we've really hit on some really strong core things here that have been coming together for a long time. And I think we need, as a team and a group, to consider that we should try two things. I think that this group should get together and describe what that loose framework is and come back to Stay Tuned STL with what that means. And I think that we should also talk with Galamich, the CEO of KETC, and how do we use PBS as a new form of community engagement to get this education and loose framework modeled out to really get the rocket going in St. Louis, because I think we're ready to do it.
Well, and we need to get the stories out too. That's
You
that's
see
what
these
we need to
alliances.
do.
I mean, you see what the Beacon did with KWMU. Yeah, I mean, we can do that over here. I'll be back next week.
Joe, this is all about my pay grade. Give us the last word. I want to, what do you wish maybe the rest of the community knew that developers would like for them to know?
That the transit-oriented development is happening already just with the promise of the trolley. There's an $11.4 million project that just got completed, Hamilton and Del Mar, an area nobody thought development would happen, and they did it because the trolley was about to happen ahead of time. They wanted to get in there. Renovated one building, built a new 3-story building. The Washington University $80 million project on Del Mar is magnificent. Would that have come without the trolley? Probably, because the loop is coming back strongly, but it's just an added bonus. It's another reason to tell students around the country, come to Washington University and stay here once you graduate. It's marvelous.
There's also some other developments that are taking place, around the Wabash Station and east that are just astounding. And I'm just really excited about the impact of all the stuff we're working on. It's going to be amazing.